Hi students, welcome back to another note video. This is Miss Collins here. We're going to go ahead and jump right in. These are our first notes of this unit, and we will be talking about the northern states. And in this unit, it's all about learning about how the states um, are starting to change a lot and grow apart, and that this is going to lead to a civil war eventually. So in these notes, we're just going to talk about the northern states and how they're going to develop a lot differently. In our next set of notes, we'll talk about the southern states and how they are going to be developing differently. And then one of our last notes this unit will be about all these different events that are eventually going to trigger the American Civil War. So let's jump into these northern notes and get started. So make sure you have your note outline open. So something that's going to be really helpful to think about is thinking all the way back to the beginning of the year when we talked about the 13 colonies and how we talked about how the New England colonies, right, those are the most northern ones, the middle colonies, in the middle, and the southern colonies all develop very differently. And it has to do with the climate, the type of soil there, how many people are going to migrate to this area, and what kind of people are migrating there, and like what kind of jobs are they doing. And so that's really what's going to cause our country to look so differently when you're traveling from north to south. And so just think about that. Try to remember in the northern states, a lot of people were coming for like religious freedom, and there wasn't really a lot of great farming soil. And so people had to find other types of work. And that's going to kind of affect and lead into what we talk about today. So something just to think about, to remember that, right, in the 1700s, we've kind of been talking more about the 1800s recently, but we're jumping back a little bit to just remind you, right, 1700s, a lot of people in the US and in Europe are mostly farmers, and they make what they need by hand. Most female family members, their job is to like make clothing for the household, to cook food, and there are very few skilled workers in town. Skilled workers are people like blacksmiths or carpenters or shoemakers, like someone who knows a trade, like how to do some sort of process that not everybody knows how to do. And this is just how life had been. And but as time is going on, there's not enough goods to meet the demands, right? Our country is growing. We're trading with different countries. Our cities are rapidly expanding as more immigrants are coming over. And there's all these people that want to buy goods, but there's not enough goods to sell, which is actually a great problem to have because that brings opportunities. So this is going to lead to the Industrial Revolution, and this is really important to know and to understand, the Industrial Revolution. And basically, it's just a time period where there's going to be a really big growth in using machines to make products. And it begins in the mid-1700s, and it actually begins in Great Britain, our good old friends across the ocean there. And the first big breakthrough on like machines is going to be all through like clothing items and like making like fabrics, and which is actually a lot if you think about how much that could help you and what you could do with fabrics. It's not just like your clothing, like think about your furniture, think about like your sheets for your bed, like all of that would fall under that category. So this guy named Richard Arkwright invented a large spinning machine called the water frame, and it could produce cotton thread by using flowing water as its source of power. And so mills and factories are going to spring up in Great Britain right next to rivers, because they're going to use that for like free flowing power from the rivers to run their factories. And again, this is a big deal that you have a machine that can make fabric on its own, right? A machine does something on its own without a person necessarily having to force it, right? Before, you would make thread by usually using like a spinning wheel, which is something done by hand and would take a lot of time. So this thing happened in Great Britain, and Great Britain was like, cool, we have this great invention, our country is doing great. Parliament, which is like kind of the equivalent of like Congress in Great Britain, they make it illegal for people to go and like sell this idea to other countries because they are the dominant country right now in the textile industry. So like, okay, hey, sorry. Hello, British folks. Please do not sell our secrets to anyone else. Guess how long that's going to last? Not very long, because this guy, Samuel Slater, I'm so sorry for my accent. This British man, Samuel Slater, is like, okay, Parliament, forget you. I'm going to the U.S. And he actually comes in disguises himself as a farmer, and comes to the U.S. He memorized the design, so he didn't write anything down, memorized it, and he's like, I'm going to strike big in the U.S. So he sets up his first mill in Pawtucket, Rhode Island, and other mills are going to begin to appear in the northeastern United States as well. And why there? One thing is New Englanders just had more money to invest in the mills, and the region has a lot of rivers and streams. So it goes just back to like what is naturally there occurring, and that's going to make people want to bring their factories there. And few were actually built in the South, like not very many factories there, because in the South they were really more focused on agriculture and farming. So they were like, okay, bring it to the North. Oh, sorry, really quickly, at the picture, this is what I'm talking about using, if you look at this bottom picture where my mouse is, so this is like the little water wheel thing here, right? So as water comes down, it's moving this wheel, which is in turn operating machines in the factory. So it's like free electricity that doesn't exist yet, but it's like free like power to your factory. That's how it works. Cool, huh? So then we get this guy in 1798, inventor Eli Whitney made a proposal to start mass producing guns for the United States government by using this water power machinery, right? Okay, cool, we're making fabrics and threads. Let's just go straight on to making weapons. And don't forget this guy, Eli Whitney, because we're going to talk about him when we talk about our notes about the South as well. He's going to do something interesting down there too. And he also came up with this idea to use interchangeable parts. So he said, make machines that are the exact same, and every part is the exact same. So if one part breaks, we have a million like copies to replace it. And that might seem like common sense to us, but that was something that was very revolutionary. Like everything that you usually bought was like custom made for you. And so this idea that you could have like something interchangeable, right? Like your, cars weren't around here yet, but like, your car breaks down, you can easily get a replacement item for it, right? But back then everything was just like very specific and like handmade, and they didn't just have parts to replace, and you would have to get something custom and it'd be really expensive. So Eli Whitney is proposing a couple very revolutionary ideas here. So the government is actually going to give him money to build his factory with the promise that the U.S. would be the ones who benefit and could use his products, like the mass producing of guns and his interchangeable parts. So in 1801, he actually went to D.C. He presented his interchangeable parts to actually President Adams at the time, and people were very impressed. And interchangeable parts are going to, why is this so great? It's going to speed up production, and which is going to just make things more efficient. Efficient, right, means getting more done with less work. Oh, and then this is a great thing to add on here too, is that the government is going to start placing higher tariffs, like taxes, right, on goods that we import, right, goods we buy from another country, to try and promote Americans to buy within our country, buy American goods instead of buying British goods. This is going to help boost our economy. Okay, so by 1810, there's still not a lot of factories, but the U.S. had so much land, a lot of them preferred to farm and own land rather than work in this factory. And it was actually a lot cheaper to hire workers in Great Britain for factories. But what's going to change things is the War of 1812. So this happens a lot of times, right? When we go to war, Because we're not like trading as much with another country, we have to focus more on ourselves. So because we couldn't really trade with the British during the War of 1812, it led to like factories in the United States rising. So this guy, Samuel Slater, who is the one that we talked about, the British guy who secretly brought over those plans from Great Britain, he develops a system called the Rhode Island system. And basically, his strategy is to hire entire families to come and work in his factories. Because a couple of things. One, if you go, you could earn some money. Everybody loves money, duh. And you could learn a new skill, right? So you're like, all my friends know how to farm, but do they know how to operate a machine? There you go. But really, no, that gives you skill, right? Because not a lot of people know how to do that. So you are now more valuable. So it's not just going to be mothers and fathers, but children as well will come work in the factories. Yay, family life. Oh, wait, little children with their small little fingers and hands and machines. That's disturbing. We will talk more about child labor in another unit when we talk more about the progressive era and what it's like to be a child living during this time. But what I will tell you is it's really hard work, it's dangerous work, and it's children not really getting to be children. So Francis Cabot Lowell is a businessman from New England, and he develops a different approach to Slater. And he develops this thing called the Lowell system. And it's based on water-powered textile mills, and they're going to employ young unmarried women from local farms. And he actually opens boarding houses like near the factories where the women can live and they have their meals there. And the first one is going to open in 1814. And again, they're going to be working on machines that are spinning thread and weaving cloth. And so he is targeting young unmarried women. And right, this is great because as a young unmarried woman back in the day, you're kind of like a burden to your family. Right? You're just living there and you're eating food, you're taking up space. They would just love if you could get married and go off and do your own thing. Yeah, it's not like today, guys. It's not like today. So this opportunity was great for young women because it gave them, one, the opportunity to earn money, two, to get out of their parents' house and like live at these boarding houses, and three, to learn a skill, to learn a job. And these workers become known as Lowell girls. They are paid about $2 to $4 a week. Yes, you heard that right. But that is actually very high compared to other available work. And this is, again, a great opportunity. There's more jobs, more opportunities than just living on the farm. Additionally, like they would offer the women like classes they could take. They could join clubs in their free time. So now what I want you to reflect on is what are some good things that you have seen from industrialization, from the introducing of factories and this factory life into our country. So think about that for a second. You can pause if you need to, and then we'll go on. But mill life was not the easiest. Girls worked 12 to 14 hours a day. You heard that correctly. 12 to 14 hours a day. 6 days a week, so they'd have Sunday off. And they also experienced really bad health problems from these machines they were working on. If you lost a finger in a machine or lost your hand, got cut off in the machine, the factory owner does not have to take care of you. They can just fire you and kick you out of the factory and be like, oh, you're no use to me anymore. Goodbye. Your family can't sue the factory owner. I mean, they can try, but there's not laws yet that exist to protect workers at all. So any sort of health problems you're having, if you're getting injured, none of that is going to do anything for you, and it doesn't affect the factory owner at all, which is pretty crazy, right? So over here on the right, this is a picture of a young girl who was actually working in one of the factories. She's about the age like 12 or 13, and it's hard to see because this picture is black and white and it looks like someone added in some color. A lot of times photographers would do that after a picture was taken. But her hands are actually really swollen, covered in cuts from probably sticking her hands into machines and working on machines the entire day. So take a pause, think, what were some cons of industrialization? And not just what I said about like the long working hours and being injured. Really think about factories and what that could mean and how that could change and how that could be bad in the United States. Pause if you need to think. Okay, so in the 1800s, we're also going to have something called the transportation revolution. So we talked about industrial revolution, which is factories. Transportation is going to be related to, guess what? Transportation. Oh, who would have believed it, Miss Collins? The two big inventions that are going to affect transportation the most are the steamboat and steam power trains. And they're basically going to reduce shipping times and costs and be able to move people and goods more quickly. So this guy named Robert Fulton created the first full-size commercial steamboat called the Claremont. And in 1807, he traveled against current up the Hudson River without any trouble. He didn't need wind to get his boat anywhere. So this is great for rivers because it allows like any sort of boat to move wherever it needs to move. Where before you were really dependent on the wind. That's the steamboat. Steam trains are also going to become very popular. This guy named Peter Cooper built a small but powerful locomotive called Tom Thumb. And he actually, to try and prove like how fast and like this new transportation, he said he had this big, like, I don't know if I have a picture of it somewhere. Oh yeah, this is the picture on the last slide, I believe, of this event, but I could be wrong. But basically, he's like, hey guys, come check it out. I'm going to have a horse race against my train, and we'll see who is faster. Well, guess what? The train did not win, but it still showed that we have something very powerful and something that could eventually go faster. What's great about having a train is it's something that you can move up mountains, up down mountains, around curves, over rivers. They can be built very fast, and you can use very cheap materials to build the railroad tracks. And so by 1860, which is like right before the Civil War, there's about 30,000 miles of railroads linking almost every major city in the U.S. So you really just have to think about how revolutionary this is. Like, how did you get from place to place back then? It was all by horseback, or like in a carriage. And now you have this new device, this railroad, where you can get on it and it can go super fast, much more quickly, much smoother ride. You're not like open out in the air, like raining on you, right? It's a lot faster and a lot more efficient. It's like the railroad is extremely revolutionary. It's going to tie communities together. They're definitely a little more dangerous, especially in the beginning, but eventually they're going to be used with coal to power it. And there's a lot of coal areas in the northern states. I'll actually show that to you on this next slide. Sorry, this like map is a little blurry here, but right, most of the coal can be found as you're seeing up in the northern states here, right? Look down in the south here. Are you really seeing a lot of coal plants? No, not really. So again, that's another reason of why like this sort of technology is going to be more in the north, less in the south. Okay, other technological advances, stick with me, we don't have too much more to go. In 1832, Samuel F.B. Morse perfected his telegraph device that could send information over wires across great distances. It would send pulses or surges of electric current through a wire. Basically, all you had to do was tap a little bar that controlled the length of each little pulse that went through the wire. So if you've ever heard something that goes like beep, 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 that's a telegraph device. And so in order to like make the message make sense, because it could only be a little like sound, they hadn't like figured out yet how you could like talk across the wire. They developed this like kind of language called Morse code. And it's basically a combination of dots and dashes that represent each letter of the alphabet. So if I did like beep, 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 like 3 beeps, that would mean like 1 letter. Or if I did like a beep, dash, beep, then that could mean another letter. And so again, this is super revolutionary because before, if you wanted to send a message, it had to go by like mail. You had to handwrite something, send it on horseback. Who knows how long that's going to take. Now you can send a message almost instantly by using this telegraph device right across the wire. Instantly get your message to your friends, your family, whoever it is. Instantly get those messages that say, hey, war is over. Stop fighting, right? We've talked about that before in class. So that could be very helpful. Okay, more technological advances. Oh yeah, we're just about done here, aren't we? Other technological advances that are emerging out of the Industrial Revolution. In 1837, this blacksmith named John Deere, he thought that a steel plow could actually probably work a lot better to plow his soil rather than what they were using before. A lot of them were actually made of like cast iron, and you'd have to like scrape off the mud a lot when you're farming off the cast iron plow. But he developed a steel plow which could cut through the dirt very quickly so you can plant your seeds, and it's going to be very revolutionary for the farming industry. He becomes very rich because of his plows that he sells. There's other things like the mechanical reaping device, which is to cut crops, cut down wheat. And all of these advances are going to help people that are farming, especially in the Midwest. And they're going to be able to harvest larger amounts of products versus like, you know, I can only harvest so much because my tools only work so well. Now you can harvest a lot more. So overall, like most of these inventions, right, are just making life easier. You've got the sewing machine invented by Isaac Singer, which is going to help you sew your clothing together instead of doing it by hand. You have a machine. In the 1830s, something called an ice box is invented. So you could use ice to keep your food cold. Iron cook stoves are another invention, matches, safety pins, the list goes on and on. But basically what you're seeing are, like I said, products being invented that are making people's lives easier. And if you're like, why didn't these all happen before? Why didn't we have these inventions before? A lot of this is related to new technology coming out. It's related to like an overall change in culture where people are spending so much time on like their job, and maybe now they have a little more time to spend time like creating and thinking about things and questioning things and figuring out how to make life easier. And a lot of this again is going to come through the help of the Industrial Revolution. So overall, how would you summarize life in the northern states? What sort of work did the average person do? Like, how are people getting around by transportation? What, if you were to like describe to somebody, what's it like in the northern states based off of what we talked about today? Think about that, describe that, and that's it for today. So thanks for listening.